Hello and welcome into the Cubs on Deck podcast. This is episode number 89. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Greg Huss, and today I am joined by both of my co-hosts. I'm joined by Bryan Smith and Greg Zumach. We are, if you're watching online on YouTube, we're in the bottom of the screen. We are here. We're at the bottom of the screen because we're doing the fantasy draft. This is it. The time has arrived. The moment we've all been waiting for. It's time for Cubs minor league fantasy draft. Bryan, I know you can't contain your excitement any longer.
You know, I love how we always hold this draft so accountable. We go back through it. We really analyze who's the best, and we definitely don't just look at the spreadsheet of last year 5 minutes before we record and try to think about it for the first time in 8 months.
Yeah, Zumach, before you hopped on here, Bryan and I were looking through the last year's teams, and we determined that it was pretty even, honestly, between the three of us. I think we each picked up a positional group between the rotation and the bullpen and the outfield, infield. So it was pretty even across the board for the three teams. So as nerdy as we are, you're right. I think that maybe we'll try to do a little bit better of keeping track throughout the year and how we do. Honestly, Zumach, I'll kick it to you for your thoughts before we dig into this thing. But I guess a refresher on this is we're calling it a Cubs minor league fantasy draft. But we're not sitting here doing the point systems like most fantasy baseball does. Really, we just eyeball it and we're like, oh, I think Greg Zumach did better than me this year. And so it's just for fun. We're selecting. As you guys can see online, we're selecting and really for the podcast form, we'll make this. You can hear it on podcast form. We should be able to understand what's going on. It's probably best if there's any episode you're going to watch online on YouTube, this is probably the episode so you can see the teams as we're going through them. We're drafting 5 starting pitchers, 3 relief pitchers, a full starting lineup, including a DH, and then each of us gets an infielder, an outfielder, and a third bench player of whoever we want. So all in all, we're each drafting 20 players today. And Zumach, what excites you most here about what we're doing today?
No, unlike previous seasons, there's a little bit more discrepancy at the top. I think it's going to be fun. I mean, I think there's an obvious first choice, but beyond that, there's a little bit more spread out. And I think that should make for maybe not quite as exciting of a follow for the season, but very exciting for building out this draft.
I want to say one more thing before we start digging in here, and it's really not going to be in my eyes when we do this. It's not just I have my top 60 ranked prospects in the system and I just start going down that because positional value matters, right? If there's a position group that the Cubs are short on in the minors, then a guy that is good at that position group might go a little bit higher than what you would actually expect him to go, just because there's not a whole lot of depth there. So it's not just a straight ranking of our prospects. It is important to keep an eye on those positions as well as we dig in through this. So any other comments from you guys before we dig in? So we'll go snake draft here. I was randomly selected as the first pick. I swear it was random. I'll have the first pick, then we'll go to Bryan, then we'll go to Zumach, who will get 2 picks in a row, and then we'll kick it back to Bryan, me with 2 picks, and so on and so forth. So me with the first pick. I've been sitting here this entire time with the expectation that I was going to draft Matt Shaw first overall. He's the top prospect in the system. He's going to be up in Chicago. It's an easy way to view this draft in 6 months and say, man, I drafted a guy first overall that spent the entire year in Chicago. I'm going to change it up. I'm not going to go the normal route here. I'm not going to go with Matt Shaw. I'll leave Bryan, if you want Matt Shaw, you can have him. I'm going to go with Moises Ballesteros first overall. And my reason for going Moises Ballesteros is because there is no other catching in this system. I know that Pablo Aliendo exists, but man, oh man, Moises Ballesteros, having him at catcher is going to look really good on my team when there's just not a whole lot of other guys you can plug in there at catcher in this system. So I'm going first overall, Moises Ballesteros.
Yeah, for the record, I would have also gone with Moises.
Okay, then we're making it to 3.
Yeah, I think you're right because it's a good pick there. But that also leaves me running to the podium to select the 2025 Rookie of the Year to be Matthew Shaw as my first pick. It'll be my second year with him in a row. He led me to have the best offense among our draftees last year with his amazing season. And I expect him to do the same. His numbers, they might not be great, but if you think about what third basemen do in the major leagues anymore, I mean, if this guy can just throw up a 700 OPS, he's going to be like a top 20 third baseman in baseball, maybe top 15 even. It's just a position that doesn't really produce offense anymore. And even if it takes Matt a little bit of time to get to where he settles in at, I think he'll still be able to hold his own relative to other third basemen in the majors.
Nice. Well, going off of some positional scarcity, I am going to take a resurgent Cade Horton. It's a big year for him. He's been looking good apparently down in Arizona. So I will be jumping on that. And then this one, number 4, is going to be an interesting choice. I am actually going to go a little bit counterintuitive to my rankings, and just take a guy that honestly I think might have a bigger year than we were expecting. That's Kevin Alcantara.
I mean, not a whole lot of outfield depth in the system. And talk about another guy that might spend a decent amount of time in Chicago.
As a center fielder, too.
Mm-hmm. So you got, I assume you're putting him in here at center fielder. We honestly, the way that we're putting this, that could change. If you have another guy you want in center field, I don't know that you would, because Kevin Alcantara is a Gold Glove minor league center fielder. But yeah, that's good. Brian, who you got? You're up next here.
Yeah, we were talking to people in our 1060 West Discord about how we should judge winners, and Stan, our guy in there, was saying that major league value should hold a lot of weight. And just in case being on the 40-man roster makes Owen Casey get a decent number of major league at-bats this year, I'm going to put him on there to try to get those bonus points for major league value.
I like that. So we got the top 5 are off the board now, which means that the Cubs have a couple other – I have back-to-back picks here. And really, the Cubs have 2 other guys that have been around that top 100 in all of baseball. I'm just going to go right off the bat and select both those guys. I will take James Triantos at 6 overall, and then I will take Jefferson Rojas at 7 overall. So I can kind of fill in my middle infield. I'm going to put Triantos at second base, and then I will put Jefferson Rojas at shortstop. So I can fill in I've got up the middle covered here. I've got Moises Ballesteros, James Triantos, and Jefferson Rojas. That's a decent up the middle combination there.
Yeah, I'll say. I feel like it's getting close to a time where we're going to have a run on pitchers. And if you look at Cubs prospect rankings, there's a lot of split over who the best pitching prospect besides Cade Horton is. I actually have Brandon Birdsell ranked in the next spot, but I'm going to draft Jackson Wiggins here. Birdsell, we've heard has an injury. He's going to be okay in a couple weeks, but he's going to be starting a little slower than was anticipated. And I just think if Jackson Wiggins pops off this year, it's going to be one of the more meaningful steps forward in the system. I think a breakout from Jackson Wiggins means, the kind of breakout that really changes the rankings completely. And in case that happens, I'd love to have him.
Zumach, having a couple of picks here is fun because it feels like you have the board at your, like, you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah, the board is fairly wide open. I got sniped on my last 2 of the guys I was going for, but that's okay. I am going to go with I'm going to go with Cole Mathis here to lock down my first base. That's a bit of a gamble there. And then I'm going to bank on another resurgent season for a lat injury, and I'm going to go with Brody McCullough.
Do you want Brody McCullough as one of your starters, I'm assuming?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'll take him as a starter.
Do you think that he spends the year as a starter?
Yeah, I think it's possible.
I think he's one of those guys that I could see him being moved to the bullpen too.
Yeah,
You know,
I think
I
it's-
don't think right off the bat I could see him starting off the year as a starter, and as he performs well, as he kind of climbs the ladder, if he makes it up to AAA, being kind of converted over to that bullpen, which honestly helps your case here.
Yeah, and honestly, kind of like Cade Horton, at some point I'm just gonna draft similarly to the Cubs, which is to take impact, and then if we can string together 70 innings pitched, we're just gonna feel fine with it.
You know, I feel like if I let Johnny Long go to Huss, with which he would definitely grab with one of the next 2 picks, he just locks up having the best offense. And so I gotta think draft strategy here, and I gotta block Huss from going that route.
Yeah, that was probably wise because he was definitely going to be one of my next 2 picks. I'm curious, Zumach, your thoughts taking Cole Mathis over Johnny Long at first base.
Yep. Yeah, so those were the 2 I was thinking about. The feedback on Cole Mathis has been, fairly good. People think he's going to, in some ways, I guess I'm kind of thinking he might rake a little bit more at the lower levels versus Johnny Long, who I think is going to be a better hitter in 2025, but probably in a very challenging circumstance. So if we're looking at more of like a fantasy perspective, I'm just going to anticipate Cole Mathis kind of beating up against lower level pitching to start off and maybe kind of cleaning up there.
That makes a ton of sense. Honestly, that's a good point for this exercise for sure. All right, I've got back-to-back picks here. I do not have a starting pitcher yet, so I ought to grab one of those guys.
You don't need him.
I ought to grab one of those guys. I'll take Brandon Birdsell. You're absolutely right, Brian, that Birdie is going to get off. I mean, he's got that lat issue right now, so just kind of a slower start in spring training, and that does not necessarily mean a slower start to the season, but worth keeping an eye on for something like this. But I'm gonna go ahead and take him because he is, to me, clearly the next best prospect, even like as far as guys that haven't been selected. Not only next best pitcher, but next best prospect. So I'm going to take Brandon Birdsell there at number 12 overall. And at 13, what you said, Zumach, kind of is resonating with me a little bit here, where I'm looking at some of the pitchers and like I'm looking at Drew Gray and Arian Rodriguez and Will Sanders and guys like that are going to get their first taste of the upper levels of the minors. And that concerns me a little bit for this draft. So I'm going to pivot. I'm going to leave my pitching staff with just one guy, with one Brandon Birdsell right now. And I'll pivot to a different position. Really, I could be a jerk and just take Pablo Aliendo, so you guys don't have any catchers. But I won't do that. I want to take Christian Hernandez, actually, which means that I need to shift somebody around here. If you guys will let me move James Triantos to third base for now. Is that, I know he didn't play the last year. Will you guys allow that? Or if
I think it's safe to say one of those guys at third base is fine. All
right, let's go. Let's move James Triantos to third base for now. I'll take Christian Hernandez and put him at second base. He's interchangeable there with Jefferson Rojas. But
the feedback I got was that Triantos may actually play a little third base at AAA this year. So
I like it. Makes sense then.
I'm going to go with Jack Neely here. Continuing to think about guys that might contribute in the major leagues. Relief pitcher, I think it can be a sort of when you get past Jack, there's kind of a gap, and then you can pick a bunch of names that are sort of your flavor. But I think Jack's clearly the number one reliever in the system, and with that in mind, might as well just fill the spot with him.
I like it. Zumach.
All right.
You're on the clock.
Yep.
Two
so
picks.
This brings me a back-to-back. Let's see here.
This is a tough point.
It is tough. I think understanding position scarcity, I'm actually going to go Arian Rodriguez here. Really kind of clean up a little bit on the pitching. Now, where that takes me after that, it gets a little exciting.
Man, you could almost fill out your you got three strong guys there in your rotation with Nola,
I know.
Rodriguez.
It was one of the strategies I thought about if Biesterfeld is going to be off the board. It's just to go for pitching, just because that's tanked me in years prior. So one of the other ways that I do want to go, though, is I'd like to take Pedro Ramirez, plug him in at second base, and we'll kind of go from there.
I like that.
Yeah. I am going to go. I always like to do one reach pick, and we've talked about him all winter, so we might as well just grab him here. Luis Martinez Gomez. I'm going to throw him in. If he starts in low A, if he goes back to Myrtle Beach, I think he has a chance to have a really good hot start and have the kind of numbers that are really going to help in this format. And so, I guess just for the purpose of this, I'll be rooting for that low A assignment.
I like that one a lot. That's you're right. You always come home with a little bit of a reach, but it's worked out in past year. But who was the guy you drafted a couple of years ago that we lost our minds all season?
Jefferson
I said
Rojas.
Jefferson Rojas.
It was
yeah.
Rojas. It was Rojas. And you probably drafted him right around here, right around this point.
Yeah,
of the draft.
probably.
Okay, that gives me 2 picks here, back to back. I only have one starting pitcher. I have no relief pitchers, and I have no outfield. I've just loaded up on infielders so far. So I ought to fill one of those gaps. I'll go with my next pick. I'll take Drew Gray here, hoping for a bounce back season out of him. I think that taking him 18th could end up being an awesome looking thing or an awful looking thing. And we'll find out probably within the first month of the season. It'll be fun. So I'll take him there. And then I have another pick that I can go with. I better fill up an outfield slot. I'll take my guy, Christian Franklin, here at and stick him in. I'll stick him in center field for now, and then he can always move him to a corner if I need to. So it's going to be – this is a tough one because he's going to get challenged in AAA. I don't know if he starts off the year in AAA. I don't know how crowded it's going to be, but if he's in AAA, that's going to be a challenge for him for sure. But I'm hoping that he really shows off his ability to make contact that he did last year, but the power comes back in a big way. So I'll take Christian Franklin at number 19 overall.
I could also see Franklin drawing an absolute ton of walks in AAA with the automated ball system.
That's true. That's a good point.
I am going to go a little counter to my prospect rankings, but I think if you were going to make a bet on who the Cubs pitcher of the year could be, think about some of the guys that have won that in the past. Sometimes it's someone who tends to be a little old for the level they start the year at, develop some confidence there, move up a level, continue to shove. So I'm going to go Nick Dean here.
Nice.
I think Nick Dean and South Bend could get off to a really good start as well. I think he's good enough to pitch in AA right now. And so when he gets to AA, it'll be at a time where a bunch of hitters have left the level. I think that's a nice fit for him this year. And I could really see him popping off.
All
Zumach,
right. I like that. Let me check my rankings here really quick.
Guys, I've got a whole system rocking here. I'm crossing names out as you guys are saying them.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. This is very official over here.
I'm going to jump on a shortstop. My dude, Angel Cepeda. I think Myrtle's going to be a tough assignment, but you know what? I think it's just kind of a fun guy to follow, and I'm going to jump all over that.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun one here. Looking at a few different places.
I think Cepeda could end up being a huge steal.
I think so too. Honestly, He was one of the guys that I walked out. I have a list of just like, I want to walk out with this person. Some of them I didn't have the opportunity, but Angel Cepeda in the middle of the rounds here, I think is a nice pick at shortstop. I will take that. I'm going to go pitching again. I'm going to go Connor Noland.
That's a good pick.
Yeah. That's actually who I thought you were going to talk about with starting at a year older, but then accumulating stats. And honestly, I think he has a very good year. He could easily be minor league pitcher of the year for the Cubs. And wouldn't really
he almost was last year. I feel like he would have easily been the second choice. Okay. I feel like my picks are tending to be weird, and I might as well just keep the theme up. But as Huss said, when you look at the catcher depth in this system, it gets rough quick. And I think Jairo Diaz is going to have a really nice season. I could see him being a top 20 Cubs prospect by the end of the year. And so I'm gonna go with him here. I think he'll split that job between a couple guys. He'll probably end up only with about 60 games behind the plate or so, but he'll get some work other places. And that's a guy that you just hear good stuff about, that they really like the way that he's starting to come together as a prospect.
Zumach, you can pretty much hold off on your catcher spot until the end at this point, unless one of
that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah.
All right. I've got to fill out some pitching, and I think when I'm looking at the starting pitchers in the organization, I think there's just one guy left that fits, that stands out among the rest, and I'm going to go with Will Sanders. He obviously had a pretty good and then bad season last year. Just good, really good, some really good moments, some really bad moments. I think that during his time this year, probably in starting off in Double-A, he ended the year last year in Double-A, so I'd imagine he starts off this year in Double-A. But man, there's that huge mix of arms gunning for that rotation in Knoxville. So we'll see where he ends up. If he ends up getting sent back down to South Bend to start off the year, then I think he's going to really dominate and put up really good numbers there. So I'll go Will Sanders for my third starting pitcher. And I think for my next pick, I'm going to go with a guy that we saw in Myrtle Beach last year, and he played a lot of second base, but he also played a decent amount of outfield during his time in Arizona. I'm going to take Jose Escobar here, and I'm going to put him in left field. I've said this before, man. I see so much Jonathan Perlaza and Jose Escobar.
Yeah.
They're different. They're different players, but I just see a lot of him, and I love me some Jonathan Perlaza. I don't see why I shouldn't love some Jose Escobar as well.
Yeah, I have to tell you, that was the pick that I was all lined up ready to take. So you threw me a little bit here.
Makes it even better.
Man, the outfield in this system drops off quick, and so I don't want to go too much further. I think I'm going to do Brett Bateman. Brett probably in Double-A to start the year. Could see him leading that league in steals. Could see him hitting 300 in Double-A. Just a nice fantasy type option to put at a pretty weak position in this system.
All right. I'll give you a few seconds here to look over your team, Zumach, and who you might select. We're churning through these pretty quick, so that gives us a chance to kind of do a little bit of reset while you're looking at your guys. Looks like what we have right now, we're actually, all three of us are filling out our rotations a little bit. I have Brandon Birdsell, Drew Gray, and Will Sanders. Brian has Jackson Wiggins, Luis Martinez Gomez, and Nick Dean. And Zumach has three guys, in Horton, McCullough, Rodriguez, and Nolan. So right now, the only reliever that has been taken is Jack Neely. And then besides that, I've filled out a lot of my position players up to this point. We only have one catcher slot still available. That is for Greg Zumach. And then Brian also has a shortstop that still needs to be selected. And really, Brian, you got a pretty big group to choose from as far as those shortstops go. So, Zumach, I will kick it to you now for picks number 27 and 28.
Yeah, so looking at things a little bit here, I am going to take maybe a bit of an off-the-board pick. Leonel Espinosa really has been raking. I think that might be a guy that, let's put him in left field. Kind of go from there.
I like my guy Leo. That was a good pick. He was on my list for that third outfield slot that I have. I like Leo Espinosa a lot.
Yeah, he's a fun one, and honestly, I don't think that he gets a ton of credit for what he can do, but I like him a lot.
Shout out to the little guys. Back-to-back picks of Brett Bateman and Leo Espinosa.
I mean,
love to see it.
I gotta rep them. Those are my dudes. So I am going to go with a guy that I'm a little surprised is actually still on the board, and that's Benjamin Cowles.
Where would you like to play Benjamin Cowles?
Let's just put him at third.
All right.
I don't think it's a huge issue with like flipping Pedro Ramirez and Ben Cowles.
I think the question of where do you want to play Ben Cowles is going to be a common theme throughout the Cubs organization this year between Iowa and maybe Chicago as well. All right, Brian, what you got?
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna stay in the middle infield. I'm gonna go with a boomer bust pick. I think Derniche Valdez has some things that are really exciting and could make him a top 10 Cubs prospect. And then, you also, I think he's sort of learning to grow up in the Cubs system, both on and off the baseball field. And, hopefully there's just a clear path to, and nothing stopping him from getting everyday plate appearances for a while. And if so, I think it'll go well. But he is one of those picks that, he could also miss the Myrtle Beach roster out of the gate, and then it might not look so good. So I'm going to take that risk here because the upside is so intriguing.
All right, I'm going to go with the reliever because the relievers in this system are not as deep as they once were. I think a couple of years ago when we first did this big draft, we had all the relievers in the world to choose from. There's a lot of good relief prospects in the organization. It is not necessarily that way anymore, but after Jack Neely, in my eyes, there is a clear number 2 best reliever in the system, and that is Riley Martin. He figured it out towards the end of the year last year in Iowa, and if he can kind of parlay that into a strong start to the 2025 campaign, then we might be seeing some Riley Martin in Chicago getting some outs. So I'm going to go Riley Martin here. He's going to be my first reliever on my team. And I guess I'd also have another pick, don't I? Which I had in my mind. I got one guy. I got Riley Martin. All right. I need to go after an additional guy. I've still got first base open. I've got a couple starting spots still open as well. And then I can fill in right field or DH. First base is tricky, man. Oh, man. I've got a guy that I can't take my eye off of, but I don't know where to put him. I might just throw him in DH because I don't know where he goes. All right, we're going to go. Man, this is tough. Give me Yahil Melendez in the DH spots because really he goes at third base or shortstop or play second base if we want him to, but I already have those slots taken. So Yahil Melendez at number 31 overall in my DH spot.
Well, you did it to me again. That was just again who I was going to take there.
This is how you draft correctly if you're taking Brian's spots.
You're doing nice work here. So that's going to throw my other middle infield plan out the window a little bit. But gosh, you know who you just keep hearing good things about is recent international signing Juan Tomas. Why don't I throw him up the middle there? I don't care whether it's Valdez or Tomas at shortstop, but just in case he gets to the DSL this year and just shows that he should be like a top 100 prospect or something crazy that sometimes you see out of that level. I'm gonna go with him.
Our first DSL prospect is off the board with Juan Tomas. I love it. All right, Zumach, what you got? Back picks.
Okay, I am going to go. You can toss him in at DH. I'm going to go Andy Garriola.
Nice.
Yep. He really has put up some very quality production. It's going to be older than the level consistently, but you know what? I think I'll just kind of take that. Let's see
and
here.
Better in his promotion last year. He got promoted in August or so when his promotion happened, and got better after that promotion. So
he really did. Yeah, he looked great. I am gonna take. This is definitely a weird spot to be at. I should probably lock down what would be a reliever. I'm gonna go with Nico Zeglin. I don't know if he's going to start. Maybe he's going to start, but he only started 4 games last year, so I'm just going to consider him a reliever for this year.
Yeah, I think a bulk inning guy.
Yeah,
I think that absolutely can. I mean, we talked about. I think during our award show last year, I think we might have given Nico Zeglin the reliever of the. We might have. I think what we decided was that he's just kind of the pitcher of the year because he just kind of did a little bit of everything, and he was man, he was good. He probably starts off the year in Double-A Tennessee.
Double-A, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just wonder if it sticks long enough for the rest of the season. And
yeah, I think that's good.
I think one of the guys we're most excited to watch this year, just because this is a dude that looks like when he hits a baseball, it's going to go 700 feet. We haven't seen him very much, is Ivan Bredauer. I'm going to put him in left field there. I think I'm pronouncing that name right. It also, like, he just looks like the kind of guy that should go by Ivan instead of Ivan. So, he's just he's a man. And yeah, his home runs will be probably the most fun in the system. Hopefully we get about 20 of them.
Bredauer and Garriola going right next to each other is pretty appropriate. Those are both two
Very
strong dudes.
Yeah.
I like it. All right, guys. I've got back-to-back picks here. I'm still sitting with 3 starting pitchers. I feel like I ought to fill that with somebody, right? I've also got first base and right field open. I'll go and fill right field with a guy that I don't know how much time, if any, that he sees in Myrtle Beach this year. He might towards the end of the season. I'll go with Eli Lovich at this pick and stick him in right field. I think he's still got a lot of work to do on his body on filling out and getting strong because he's awfully lanky right now. So that's why I don't know that we see him in Myrtle Beach this season. But it's a fun pick nonetheless. I think he's a guy that we see make his way up prospect rankings, up from, like, right now he's right around 30 on a lot of rankings. I think we see him closer to like the 10 to 15 range when in a couple of years from now. So this may be a premature pick. I think that's probably why he slid down here to 36 overall. I think that, like, this time next year he could be a top 15 pick in this draft. So give me Eli Lovich in right field, and then I will fill a starting pitcher. Man, I'll fill a starting pitcher slot. I'm excited to see what we get from Sam Armstrong this season. I think that there's a lot of things that reminded me of Sam Armstrong in 2024 reminded me an awful lot of Brandon Birdsell in 2023. And so I'm not expecting Sam Armstrong to be the Cubs minor league pitcher of the year in 2025, but I'm really excited to see what we get from him and see if we do get a little portion of some Brandon Birdsell action from Sam Armstrong. So I'll take him and I'll put him in the number 4 slot in my starting rotation.
You're meant to have Sam Armstrong on your team. I feel like
he feels like a great Huss pick.
Yeah. I am gonna go, and gosh, I feel like it's crazy that he's gone this long without getting drafted. So I have to make sure that he's not on this list. Yeah, no. Ariendes Ramon. I'm gonna put in my bench infield spot. But you could say that he's better than the 2 middle infielders I have already. He could have a better season, certainly. Really exciting start to last year. Then got to low A, continued to do really well. Then it, like, really hit the skids and struggled towards the end of the season. I think just ran out of gas, but really talented guy, projectable body, versatile, has some real sort of ready baseball skills. Would be a lot of fun if he had one of those sort of 2-level seasons.
Dude, I kind of love that Zumach and I popped Rojas and Angel Cepeda at shortstop early on. And the thing is, you were still able to get a bunch of good young shortstops. And Ramon, Juan Tomas, and Derniche Valdez, and there's still more on the board too that you can select. So, like,
definitely the strength.
I think that you have the quantity aspect of things going on for sure.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. All right. Well, I've gone this long without a catcher, so I am going to take Pablo Aliendo just to make sure that nobody sticks him on the bench and really hoses me, which I thought somebody was going to do here at some point. All right. Now we get kind of to a bit of a fun spot here. Let's see. I've got right field. Can you scroll up a little bit? What else do we have?
You have you just have Zumach. You need to fill a starting pitcher slot, two relief pitchers, a right fielder, and then your bench, which is an infielder, an outfielder, and just whoever you want.
Okay. All right. Here's a question for folks. Is Antonio Santos eligible? I think he is.
He's not technically prospect eligible, but I'm
Okay.
willing to let it slide if Bryan is.
Well, I mean, we got plenty of names to pick from. I was looking at it. I think he's still a rookie, or
Is
am
he?
I
Okay,
wrong?
is he really? Okay, I know he's made his major league debut
He
several years
has.
ago, but I guess you're right.
Yeah,
He didn't really actually log a ton of innings.
0.08 service time.
Okay, so yeah,
Yeah.
he's a
All
prospect
right.
then. Yeah,
Okay. I just want to make sure. He's a weird one. I'm
he
going to
is.
toss him. I'm going to toss Antonio Santos in as a relief pitcher.
I like it.
Yeah.
You got some bulk inning guys there, dude. Between Nico Zeglin and Antonio
Bulk
Santos.
inning and old. And I say that as somebody who's much older than either of them, of course. So.
All right. I am going to go. I've mentioned this guy on the podcast a few times. Haven't really gotten to talk about him in much detail, but I really think that Nick Hall is a good enough relief pitcher to pitch in the major leagues and to maybe sometimes with relievers when they break into the majors, it just becomes a game of luck. Like, do you hit your hot streak when you get to the majors, or do you get it sort of beat around and never earn your manager's trust? If Nick Hall made it to the majors and was really good in his first 20 innings, I could see him having a 5-year major league career in a bullpen easily. Really nice sort of sinker slider foundation that the Cubs are building on, and a guy that I just really like watching pitch. And so just, in the way that Sam Armstrong makes sense to Greg Huss, I think Nick Hall makes sense for me.
Yeah, Nick Hall was I was probably going to take him one of these next two picks to fill in a bullpen slot. So that was, as much as I was taking picks from you, you took that one from me. So that's good. All right. I've got one more starting pitcher, 2 relievers. I've still got that first base slot that I'm looking at 8 different dudes for this first base slot. Not actually 8, but 1, 2, 3, like 6 dudes. I've got 2 picks here back to back. Let's go ahead and fill that first base slot. I'm actually going to go with someone that has just been off prospect radars for literally his entire pro career, and it's been quite some time. I'm going to take Felix Stevens and put him here at first base because I think Felix Stevens is going to get 500 at-bats all in Double-A Knoxville this year. I think he's just going to log a ton of innings in Double-A Knoxville, and so we know that he has outrageous power. We know he strikes out 36% of the time. That's okay. I've got a lot of other good hitters. Just give me the dingers here with Felix Stevens. And I've heard nothing but good things as far as him in the clubhouse too. I've every single person I've ever talked to says that Felix Stevens is awesome in the clubhouse. So I will take him there. And then with my next pick, let's go. The relief pitcher thing is scaring me a little bit. I only have Riley Martin. I don't know. Might as well stay on brand with the Greg Huss team, right? I mean, I'll take Frankie Scalzo Jr. I'll put him here because at that point, I have Riley Martin. I have Frankie Scalzo Jr. I have Christian Franklin. This is a Greg Huss team if I've ever seen one.
Can you call him in from your garage to announce his own selection?
Yeah.
Doesn't he live over there?
Yeah. He's staying in my basement. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you can't make that pick unless you have a mustache.
True. I'll go put on a fake mustache. I'll have him announce the pick himself. I'm being selected to Greg Huss's team. Yeah.
I better go with another starting pitcher here. I'm gonna go Naz Moulay, just arm talent. Had a winter to get better with his secondary pitches. Just a guy that you could easily see coming to camp and being at a totally different, higher level that he was at last year.
I like it. That could be a breakout pick.
Yep. I like that a lot. All right. I am going to go with a couple guys here. One of them is Anderson Suriel.
I like that pick.
Put him in the outfield. I think I've got one open spot. He's more of a first baseman, but you know what? He's going to log some outfield time, really growing into his power. I like it. Let's see here. I'm debating. I'm going to go for a bench infield spot first, which is a little bit of a roll of the dice. Ty Southensea.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like that one a lot. He was on my radar for sure. This is, guys, I'll tell you what, like, I think the Ty South scene, obviously a very good pick, and I think that we can fit, like, we are more than capable of filling out these teams. But this looks a whole lot different than our drafts the past couple of years. I've got to say, right?
Yeah.
I think that, like, the types of players that we're drafting down here are different than the types of players that we saw drafted in the past couple of years, for sure.
That's true. Yeah. I am going to go with, would it be that surprising if Hayden McGeary ends up having a better year than Johnny Long? Or,
Nope. I think it's a great pick. Yeah. I thought about him really hard there.
Hayden's going to go back to Double-A. He's gonna have learned a lot from last year. That stadium the new stadium probably be a little easier to hit in than the old stadium was. I'm going to go with Hayden.
I like that one, especially with him going back.
Kind of a post-hype sleeper.
Yeah, I like that a lot. All right, I got back-to-back picks, and I'm really, as far as like, I've got one starting pitcher to fill, one relief pitcher, and then my bench is wide open. So let's go. I got to fill this last starting pitcher spot eventually, right? I'm going to go with another one of my guys here that I think that I really hope that he does really well this year because he deserves it, and that's Cole Franklin. I'm going to put him in my starting rotation spot, my last one here. I don't know where he starts the year. I don't know how he ends up in a rotation in Iowa, but I think he will end the year in the rotation in Iowa. And man, I just hope he does really well. He looked good during his short stint in Tennessee, and then get called up, had the injury, obviously missed the rest of last year. But Cole Franklin, I've got my fingers crossed. Hopefully everything goes smoothly with him. And I think that we can expect him to be stretched out to start off the season. Eventually, maybe move to the bullpen at some point, but I think we see him starting off the season stretched out as a starter.
That's awesome.
All right.
Yeah, I really want Cole to have a great year this year. Like, that would be amazing.
All right, guys. I'm gonna go with an infield. I'll call it an infield spot. I'm gonna draft. I'll take Ronnie Cruz here.
Yeah, that's fun.
I think that's a fun. I don't know if we see him in Myrtle Beach this year. Maybe we do towards the end of the year. Maybe not. I don't know if he ultimately ends up as a shortstop, a second baseman, a center fielder. I don't know, but I know that there's an awful lot of excitement about him in the organization, and so I will take Ronnie Cruz.
Oh boy, we're definitely at the oh boy part of this draft. Let's see. I think that I'm going to go with give me Yonder Maria as my last starting pitcher. Be coming stateside this year, pitching in the Arizona Complex League. So he's going to have, a month in the Mesa Complex with coaches there, which I imagine is going to be really big for his development, and already a really awesome talent. I could see him being sort of the breakout of the Complex League.
I think that, Brian, you definitely have the most guys that people, that people even listening know the least about, right? Between Yonder Maria, Jairo Diaz, you have
Juan Tomas,
even Ivan Bredauer a little bit, Juan Tomas. Like, I think you have the guys that are going to be questioned at first, but you might look like a genius in a few months.
Yeah, you might as well swing for the fences in an exercise like this.
All right, Zumach.
All right. So I am going to go from a starting pitcher perspective with the guy that as soon as I put my list out in November, December, where it was, I got two immediate things. One was you totally forgot about Ben Cowles, which that was a total oversight. That I just forgot about him. That was my bad. But the next one, and I had overlooked him a little bit, was Brooks Capel. And immediately got like 3 messages from the scouting staff that was like, nope, yeah, you should have included him. So I'm going to go with a scouting pick on that one. I think we'll roll with that.
Hand up from me. The starting pitcher draft picks. We talked about it a little bit last time's episode, Brian, about last year's pitching draft picks. man, I'm still getting to know these guys. I'm still trying to figure out like
Oh yeah,
it's
I hear you.
they when the day after they were all drafted, I was like, these are all the same dude. And
Totally.
since then, I've been picking up more and more every day. But man, they run together a little bit, you know.
No,
Totally
they do.
agree.
You're absolutely right. And honestly, they went with different strategy this year. I'm not even sure I love it. I'm definitely holding it in reserve on that. Okay. I am. What positions do I have left here?
You
It's
have
relief pitcher.
a relief pitcher, an outfield bench guy, and then
Mm.
just take your pick at another bench guy. It could be infield,
I'll take
outfield,
him.
whatever.
Okay. All right. All right. Let's go here.
We
Boy,
each need a
bench.
reliever, which is we got to find 3 more relievers in the system.
You know what? Yeah, and I'm really debating on a couple guys that I could go with. I'll just go with the reliever here, and is a guy that I think is going to log a lot of strikeouts. I'm just going to go with Shane Marshall.
Yeah.
But I will say, if I can just toss out there, and people can steal him if they want to, though this would be bold. I was seriously thinking one of the guys on my list today that would be my last pick would actually be Burl Caraway. I don't even know that he's going to do anything this year, but kind of like what we were talking about with Cole Franklin, I just want it for him. I just hope that for his own kind of personal satisfaction that Burl Caraway has a really nice season for his own sake.
Also, how sweet would it be to draft Burl Caraway and then him break out this year?
Oh God, I thought about it. You know, I saw him pitching in front of, I think it was Hottovy, and I was like, man, I'm just gonna do it. But
I'm all in.
I really like Shane Marshall. I think that he shows off the type of reliever profile, kind of like what Brian was talking about earlier, where it's just like, oh, all of a sudden this guy is pitching in AAA and he's getting strikeouts and he's on that borderline between making it up to the majors. That's the kind of guy.
All right,
Yeah,
Brian.
that's a fun one. I am going to go with Joan Delgado. Outfield, another just guy that I think has probably a safe bet to get an outfield job and has like some athleticism, some surprising pop for his size. Not a name that's likely to sort of rise and be a top 20 prospect at the end of the year or anything, but a guy who could have a good solid season at a position that, there won't be a lot of good solid seasons at in this system.
I like that one. I am gonna take. So I've got 2 picks here, and then my only other pick that I'll have is the very last pick of the draft. So I better get the guys that you're gonna take here. I keep looking at Matt Hallback on my list here, and he went down to the Australian Baseball League this winter. Obviously, a draft pick last year. The Cubs seemed excited about him, and for him to be kind of thrown into the fire right away down in Australia was interesting and exciting. And so I think he's another guy. He was a college draft pick last year, and he's going to come in and probably be down in Myrtle Beach and South Bend in 2025. And so he could put up some serious numbers during his time there. I'll stick him. I don't know where Matt Hallback is going to play as a pro. I mean, I think we could see him at first base or third base. We could see him in right field or left field. I'm going to go ahead and stick him in my outfield spot here because I think that he gets some time at least this year in the corner outfields. But I don't quite know. I think he's a hitter, and we'll see where else he plays. I'm not too worried about that at this point. So I'll go Matt Hallback. My other pick, do I go with the relief pitcher or do I go with a bench slot? Let's go with my bench slot because this feels like a guy that one of you guys might take. I'll take Christian Olivo because he's a true bench player. Like he can be infield or outfield. And so I'll stick Christian Olivo in my bench role. Really good defender, both in the outfield and in the infield, which is like kind of weird, right? To be that good of a defender in both spots is unique. The bat is obviously was not that great last year, and I don't think the bat's ever going to be that great, but just a fun guy to have as the last guy on your bench, and I'll take Christian Olivo here.
I'm going to fill up my last reliever spot here. I'm going to draft a guy that split his time in college last year between starting and relieving. I would imagine we'll probably do the same in the system this year, bouncing between piggyback starting, relieving, all different sort of roles for him. The guy the Cubs drafted twice, Daniel Avitia. Really nice ball of clay for the Cubs to work with. I think they've liked him for a long time. I bet they have a very, very clear development plan for him. And I know a guy that Jeff Pontus at Baseball America recently called out as well. So that's a good sign. If Jeff likes his stuff, then I sure do as well.
All right, Zumach, your final two selections.
Lots
of pressure here.
Yeah, a lot of pressure, but it's, never let the pressure exceed the pleasure here. So I am going to go with a guy that, honestly, we've been waiting to break out for ages, since the 2020 draft, and that's Jordan Nwogu. I'm just going to stick him on the bench for the outfielders and, kind of call it a day there. And then the big question, I got to try to find one more bench bat, right?
You got one more bench bat that you gotta come up with.
Okay.
Here,
all right. We can do this. We can do this.
Can I because
Please?
I'm out with position players. I guess can I offer this up to either of you guys who both need to fill one more bench slot? You've got a couple big boys at first base that were drafted last year between Cameron Cisneros and Edgar Alvarez.
Yeah.
Two big boy first basemen. You can each select one for all I care. But that'll bring some excitement to the team for sure. Just my recommendation.
No, I like it. I'm gonna go with Cisneros. Yeah, I think that's a really good one.
You can never go wrong having a big boy on your team.
No, a rowdy boy.
Rowdy boys, right?
Hit,
so I've wondered a little bit this offseason if we should have made a slightly bigger deal out of the last 2 months that Ethan Hearn had last year in South Bend. I'm going to pull up the numbers real quick because he deserves to be called out for it. Final 2 months of the year, 284 batting average, 368 on base, which is certainly the best he's approached in the system, and a 578 slugging percentage, 7 home runs in those final 2 months. Ethan, believe it or not, it's felt like he's been here a really long time. He's only 24 years old. If he'd gone to college, he would not have been very far out of it at this point. There's a chance that he gets a lot of catcher at bats in AA, and man, if he keeps hitting, if that power has like sort of fully transitioned from batting practice power to in-game power, it's a fun bat to have around, and a guy that pitchers really like throwing to, just like one of those sort of true catchers that gets a lot of praise from guys that we talk to. So yeah, he's a good last guy for the team.
Yep, great choice.
I think it's really fun that we can include Ethan Hearn on this draft board. Like that would not have been the case this time last year. We definitely would not have done that.
Yeah,
and that's really fun that he performed well enough that he gets included here. All right, guys, I have the final selection of this draft. I have to draft a reliever. That's the only guy I have missing here. And as I sat here, and I my eye on two relievers, and they are very opposite players. And so I'm going to go ahead and say both of their names before putting one of them on here. Mitchell Tyransky is a guy that I really had my eye on last year. He was a signing towards the end of this, or towards the beginning of the season, last year. And I really liked what he did on the mound. The other guy is JP Wheat, who is just very different, but has some nasty stuff, throws the ball really hard, frisbee slider, simply cannot find the zone. And so I'm going to go with JP Wheat here because, like, for my third reliever, it feels like, man, if he could find the zone a little bit more, he's going to be really fun and really talented and really show out next year this year, I guess, and still in Myrtle Beach and South Bend if he can get up there. So I'm going to draft JP Wheat, but I did want to give a little shout out to Mitchell Tyransky because he was fun last year.
If I had a shout out to give, if I had one more relief pitcher spot, I would have gone with Luis Reyes. Are you guys familiar with him?
Yeah, not as much as I'm sure you are, but yeah.
Just a big dude who showed up in Myrtle Beach towards the end of last year, throws really hard, has walked everyone in sight since he's been in pro ball, but one of those guys that I believe is like up towards 100 miles per hour, almost like kind of is developed like Giovanni Cruz once did. And yeah, if he throws enough strikes, like he's the type of guy that could be one of the better relievers in the system. So just one to file away for all the nerds that wondered who pick 63 might be.
It's fun because I know that Sam Wiederhaft was like really excited that he made his way to Myrtle Beach towards the end of the year. Like he was really excited about Luis Reyes and in that bullpen and what he was doing there. So now that we're done, we got 3 teams loaded up here. 3 fun teams. Who was I know? So Luis Reyes was a guy that you had your eye on. Zumach, is there anybody that you had your eye on that just didn't fit in your team, or even somebody that one of us selected that you're really pissed that you didn't get?
Oh, always. No, I think that this year, more than anything, the teams feel much more balanced to kind of start off.
Yeah.
I think, and I'm not saying like amongst the 3 of us, but really it feels like if you line up the starting pitchers across the board, they feel pretty good. The relief pitchers are kind of different, style, but they look pretty good. And then the lineups have a nice mix. And I think that, what is this, the 3rd year that we've done this now? Like it feels like maybe we're coming into our own a little bit. Maybe I'm just feeling that personally, but in many ways, I think part of it is because the Cubs drafting strategy over the past couple of years has been a lot of college guys.
Yeah.
And college guys do well against these lower levels, even getting up into the AA range. So it makes these teams very fun.
Yeah, no one drafted someone like Kenton Egbert who could could end the year with a 2.5 ERA easily.
Yep.
But just doesn't necessarily fit in the context of what we're trying to do with this. But like, yeah, there are going to be seasons like that. I mean, you know that a couple of the draftees from last year, Thomas Mangus, Hayden Frank, Christian Gordon, like one of those guys is going to pop off, and we're going to look really silly. We didn't draft them either, but I think we also always sort of prioritize some level of prospect pedigree into our picks. And so it's a lot more fun to roll the dice on someone like Cole Franklin or someone as far away as Yonder Maria over some of those sure college low A bets.
Yeah, I mean, look at me taking JP Wheat over like Evan Ashenbeck for that last reliever spot, right? Like it's very possible that Evan Ashenbeck ends the year in AA Tennessee and JP Wheat doesn't find the zone once all year. Like that's a possibility, but going with JP Wheat is a little more exciting because of how electric we know he is. Kenton Egbert was one of the names that I had on my list where it's like I easily could have seen him being selected as a part of this draft. Another name that I think we've drafted the past couple of years is Luis Rujano. And he obviously got some run he got sent down to the Arizona Complex League last year, pitched in Myrtle Beach. I could see him breaking out this year. I could see that this finally being the year that we get something from Luis Rujano. Another name that was a staple the past 2 years, BJ Murray Jr. was not selected. And I know that he had a really rough season last year between AAA Iowa and AA Tennessee. But if you're betting on a bounce back, BJ Murray might be a good bounce back candidate for 2025. So
I mean, you drafting Christian Olivo ahead of Chase Strumpf might have been the biggest upset of the entire night.
Honestly, I think you're probably right, dude. I think I'm sitting here regretting that now. Why don't I have Chase Strumpf on my sheets? Why don't I have him here? What was I thinking? I should have taken him first overall.
He's only in your heart.
That he's not. Yeah, that really would have completed a Greg Huss team is if I would have taken Chase Strumpf there. That's a good point. So, all right, guys, any parting thoughts before we wrap this up?
Okay. I mean, what I will say is that the depth of this system is in real question right now, and I think we probably felt that in the middle rounds. And this is a really big season for this farm system to reestablish that depth. They really need their A-ball coaches to do significant developmental work with these players and help them jump a level so that when we have this draft again next year, we feel a little more comfortable when we get to round 8, round 10 or something. It's a really big season. Not as much for the top guys. Like, they just need to break through, but they're on the right track. But the meat of this system, really big season.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I think
it's huge.
I think that's, you saw how quickly we rattled off the top, what, 9 picks, top 8 picks for sure. Or even really down to Brandon Birdsall here at number 12, right? We rattle off those pretty quick. We spent more time talking about the guys in numbers 50 through 60 than we did guys 1 through 12. And because there's just more question marks and more intrigue with them, just based on like what are they going to be. But you're right, like this time next year, we need to see numbers 20 through 40 be guys where we're like, oh, I feel pretty damn confident in what they are, even if they haven't necessarily shown it statistically. So yet we need to feel a little bit more confident in those guys. So yeah, that's intriguing for sure. Zumach, you got anything else?
No, I would echo what you have both said, which is this is a huge season for the organization and also a huge draft. Like, this is a huge draft, and they've got to nail it. They now know that they're going to be selecting 20 picks. Up until the Alex Bregman thing, it was pretty close to like feeling like you were going to lose 2 major picks on that, and you kind of just deal with it. Excuse me. But this is a huge draft, and it's got to be beyond just the first round. Like, right? Like, they've selected amazing number 1 picks the past couple of seasons. They've got to nail it for a significant amount of the bonus round, and you got to get lucky on a couple what would be formerly day 3, which is now just the back half of day 2, which is going to make for a very long day. But you got to nail some of those post bonus round picks as well.
For sure. All right, guys. Brian, Greg, thanks for coming on. Thanks for doing this draft every year. We are the biggest of nerds for doing this every single year. I mean, this is honestly probably the nerdiest thing that I do in life is this draft right here. It's pretty incredible. So thank you guys for joining me on this. Thank you guys for being nerds and listening out there, tuning in for an hour show of us going 60 names deep on a Cubs minor league draft class. Super fun. Thank you guys. We'll be back in your ears in 2 short weeks. Take care, guys.
Cubs.